Alright, today we're going to go over the Deliverance set and talk about what the good things are in it, which cards to pay special attention to. Overall, Deliverance is all about insight management. I have never seen a set that is so wrapped up in its core mechanism. They did Dreamscape bringing out insight, then they did Delirium, which played with that, added a die roll, and it actually was ridiculously great for as random as a die can be. And now we have Deliverance. Deliverance, a lot of people have trouble with at first play just because they can't figure out when to spend their insight and when to save. So first, let's talk about one of my favorite cards because I helped design this or recommended this. There's a new starting card, the Dreamseeker. Gives you an insight, draws a card. In Skulls and Sails, they modified this concept to change an apprentice into an apprentice plus the resource gain, because the draw a card aspect, if this is the very bottom card of your first shuffle, you go your first 2 turns without ever playing it, and it misses a shuffle, and that feels really terrible. Also, if you can banish your deck fast enough, this card gets insanely awesome, because you're going to see it every single turn, or very nearly so. That said, banish your deck, all of it. Okay, next up is Thea. When you look at the Deliverance board, one of the first things you'll notice is that this is a spot up by the cultists in the heavy for Thea to be out there the whole game. It's in every faction hero. When you acquire it, it goes straight into your hand. Right from the beginning of the game, everyone has this goal: get 16 insight, put this straight into your hand to get 2/2/2 and draw a card. It's worth 6 points. Out of 16 insight spent, 6 points is really not all that great. But its effect, if you can get it quick enough, is amazing. Now 16 might be sounding way too hefty of a price. There are 4 cards that you need to look out for right from the get-go. These Thea's weapons. We've got the Katana, which is all factions, but if you look at its effect, it's definitely the enlightened weapon, because it's draw a card when you play it, and it makes Thea cost 4 less. Note, it does not say Thea the redeem costs 4 less. If you play this in combination with Dreamscape, all of these Thea's weapons are ridiculously powerful, because they actually make the original one cheaper too. Alright, the Scimitar. This is the Lifebound one, which is clearly seen because of, the green in the image. Gain 2 points when you drop it down, cost 4 less. The Cutlass, the Void one, gives you 2 power when you play it, 4 less. And then the Mace. And despite this one looking more void, this one is the Mechana version, which gives you 2 runes when you play it. Every one of them counts as all factions. Every one of them costs less to acquire. There are a couple combos within the Mechana cards that you're going to see in a minute that this counting as all factions and counting as a Mechana is slightly more powerful than you think it is, in addition to getting the big giant overall goal easier. That said, I rarely save for this card unless my engine is just, oh my gosh, I am spitting out the insight and I don't get any good transforms really fast. I like the transforms more than I do this. I've always loved transforming cards. It's one of the reasons Realms Unraveled is one of my favorite, and they brought that back. So to start with, we're going to go through the transform cards. All of the Mechana constructs have this same exact formula. They're going to have a construct that does absolutely nothing until you transform it paying 5. All of them cost 5 to transform. But then, unlike Delirium, where when you play a construct, you get a benefit based on how many other Mechana constructs you have, this one is every single turn gain the benefit for each transformed you have, specifically transformed. So you'll note that does not include the maces and whatever else from those constructs I was showing you a bit ago. Those don't help because they're not transformed. The blueprint, the 3-cost ones, give you honor every turn. The Mechanic gives you power each turn. Pretty straightforward. But then we have the Void Cycler. The Void Cycler gives you a rune every turn for every Mechana construct you have transformed. Even if this is your first one and you transform it, getting 1 extra buying power every single turn, and you should have enough to transform it really early in the game if that's all you're investing in, should be very easy, and there's 2 of those in the set. Here's where it gets stupid. Everyone looks at this Thea that's available right from the beginning and goes, oh, that's the biggest thing in the set. Not at all. This is the biggest thing in the set, the Ironheart. First of all, it costs 15 to transform, not the normal 5. But every single turn you get 1 insight for every Mechana you control, every Mechana construct. This does not say transformed on it, and this is the non-transformed version, so it helps you get insight really quickly and use them on whatever you want. This is where these things start to matter because they are still Mechana constructs. But here's where it gets really cool. You want to transform this as fast as possible. Look at this. 3 runes, 3 power, 3 points every single turn. The Ironheart is absolutely devastating. Do not undervalue this. It's hard to get your hands on from the center row, get into your deck, then have the insight to do it, but well worth aiming for. It's a game winner for sure. Alright, now we have some more transforms. Most of the transforms in this set, absolutely including the Mechana I just went through, this little 1 honor per turn when you transform it for 5, is a insight sink. The game is trying to convince you to look at these insight sinks and go, yeah, I want to do that, and then not have an insight to take advantage of more things that are going to happen during the game. You're going to want insight to transform things. You're going to want it to buy this. You're going to want it for the new mechanism called Phantasm. The Phantasm mechanism is a card that's in the center row. You can immediately pay insight to get its effect 1 time. It banishes, goes straight to the discard pile. It's very similar to the Shards of Infinity mercenary mechanic, if you're familiar with that one. These are actually the same developers that made that. But it is really, really useful to see something out here that gives you 3 power, and all you have to do is pay 4 insight right now and use it once, and then no one gets to put it in their deck. You can do some serious damage with that. The other thing that they're going to do to try to convince you to spend your insight is Dreambind. When you defeat certain monsters, they'll have this effect. Let me pull out a really tempting one that everyone's going to go, oh yeah, you have to Dreambind that. The Dreadmage. Dreadmage gives you 2 points and you draw 2 cards. If you can pay 4 insight on top of that cost when you defeat it, you add it to your deck. Then every time you draw it in your deck, you play it for another 2 points and another 2 cards. That is never going to be a bad option. That is, everyone wants to Dreambind this. But everything in this set is going to try to drain your insight and leave you lacking when you need it most. So let's talk about the Lycan Ranger. 6 insight to transform. Right now, it's a Mystic and a Heavy. It gives you 2 and 2. Nice balance of both resources. When you upgrade it, it becomes gain 3 and 3, and it gains 2 honor value. That's very important. All the Mechanas gained 1 honor value when they transformed, going from a 5 to a 6. Except for the Ironheart, which went from an 8 to a 10, because obviously you needed more points wrapped up into that awesome card. But Lycan Ranger just becomes a ridiculous beast of kill everything, buy everything, have all the resources you ever need. There are 2 of those in the set. Alright, then we have the Psionic Apprentice. Already a solid card. It's defeat a monster that costs 4 or less without paying its cost. If you can get 7 insight to transform it, you can turn it into defeat any monster without paying its cost. A 4 cost and 7 insight to kill anything over and over and over, and it jumps 2 honor value again and becomes a 4 honor card. This is a do not leave on the field card. Even if you have 5 or 6 runes and there's all this other stuff you're going to see in a minute, you're like, oh yeah, I really want... No, you want this more. Do not let anyone have this option. The amount of damage you can do with a transformed Psionic Paladin is just too big. Alright, and then we have my personal favorite. I actually transformed this far more frequently than any of the others. The Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter costs 8 to transform, but it only costs 3 to buy this thing. It's just a heavy infantry with the option to upgrade. But when you upgrade it, it becomes 5 power on a single card, and you can banish something in your hand or discard a pile. I love getting one of these early in the game, transforming it almost right away. It on its own is going to smack most of the easy monsters in this game, and just a little bit of mix will hit even the biggest monsters in the game. So, yeah, you can't really go wrong with this. It's not quite as good as kill whatever you want for free, but sometimes you get to kill 2 things with it, because it and the heavy infantry let you kill 2 or 3 good things. The banish is why I like it so much, though. Get that early banish, go to town on the game, make your insight cards come faster, regenerate your ability to buy other big stuff. There's 2 of these in the game. Highly recommend the Demon Master. I love that thing. You don't have to love it in every situation. It is a situational card. But now let's talk about these Dreambind monsters. Everything here has a slight yellow tint to it. A normal monster has this just white. They've just tinted the entire card yellowish to remind you that it's got a Dreambind option. The Warp Druid is actually easily the most important of the options. Absolutely love Warp Druid. You gain 2 honor and banish a card in your hand or discard pile. It only costs 1 insight to Dreambind it. Every time you draw this card, you're going to get 2 points, and you're going to banish another card or in your hand or discard pile. Be careful with Dreambind monsters. There's an obvious drawback to them. The obvious drawback is you're vastly reducing your ability to kill really big monsters and buy really big cards, because every time you draw a Dreambind monster, you have 1 card in your hand not contributing towards those big plays. However, you're getting points repeatedly over and over and ending the honor pool much faster. These are a very quick way to end the game if you can do a couple of these. The fact that this has banish on it that you can repeat while ending the game to increase how fast and efficient your engine builds, I cannot tell you enough. Dreambind this card early in the game. Late in the game, you might actually just skip Dreambinding it, even though it only costs 1. You're going to have better use for your insight, and drawing a card that gets you 2 points. Every card late game gets you at least 1 point, just buying a heavy or killing a cultist or whatever. You don't want to weaken your hands. It's going to be better to go for those reach plays. Alright, next up is the Warprog. The Warprog gives you 3 honor when you play it, and takes an insight from an opponent. It only costs 3 to Dreambind it. This I would call the biggest trap in all of these Dreambind monsters. 3 insight doesn't seem like a lot, especially after you just stole 1. And you're going to constantly have that drain from your opponent give to you. It sounds so good. But what it's going to do is encourage your opponent to spend their insight as rapidly as they can if you've got this Dreambound to your deck. It's only giving you 3 points every time it comes up, which is solid. Don't take anything away from this. This is actually a really good card, a really good effect. Force them to spend their insight rapidly, but they're going to match pace with you if you make them not save. What you want them to do when you're going for a Dreambind monster heavy deck is have them aiming for some big card like this, because ultimately they're going to spend 16 or 12 or whatever amount of insight just to get 6 points, 2 right away, draw a card, do a little bit of stuff with it. It's good, but they're not going to have time to play it a second time, and they're not going to see the full effect of that card if the game's already over. I think this is a little bit of a trap. It is a great card. I just want you to understand that in reference to everything else you could do with that 3 insight, it's probably better to pop this once and let it roll. Alright, Dread Mage. I showed this off earlier because I've never met a person who can resist Dreambinding this when they have the opportunity. Every time you draw it, you're going to end up with a 6-card hand because it'll replace itself and give you another card with the draw 2. 2 points every time you cycle it. The quicker you get your deck banished down, if you've got a Dread Mage and some Warp Druids, oh my goodness, you're just going to destroy your deck, especially if you have one of those Demon Masters as well. Your deck is just going to cycle, and gain points so rapidly. 4 insight all at once, it's actually pretty common for me to leave one of these on the table and kill 2 cultists, because I believe I have the better killing deck than my opponent, or I've got one of those psionic apprentices that's going to kill a 4 cost for free, and I don't have the Dreambind cost yet. It's risky to leave this out there because your opponent might get a chance to do it first. If they don't have 4 insight and I don't think they've got the better killing deck, and they're more likely to draw the 4 before I am, I'm going to leave it out there and just kill a couple cultists. I really am. Because I want to Dreambind this in my deck as early as possible. Late in the game, it's a very obvious trap that you're probably going to draw it once and get 2 points and 1 card for 4 insight. You could do better just playing one of the phantasms in the center for like 3 power right now, turn that into some points. It's like you had an extra card when you played a phantasm anyway. So that 4 insight can do better things late in the game, but even mid game, just pick up the Dread Mage. It's amazing. Alright, next up, here's where your choices get really hard. The Obfusca Spirit. 4 honor every time you play it. Spectacular just for that. Choose an opponent to discard a card at random. I cannot emphasize enough how devastating it is in the mid to late game for someone to have a 5-card hand and keep losing a card, especially at random. If they could choose which one they want to drop and they get rid of their worst thing or something that doesn't fit with the rest of the hand, it's bad, but at random you can absolutely cripple someone by having this. It costs 4 to Dreambind it, it's pretty expensive to kill with 5 cost. It's hard to not do it when you have the option and the funds to do it. Alright, next up is the ultimate Screw You Mechana card. 4 points, and every opponent chooses and destroys a construct. You choose it and destroy it. So you get to get rid of the ones that are doing them the best. It only costs 2 to Dreambind this thing. It costs 6 to kill, but only 2 to Dreambind it to get 4 points. You're going to find yourself Dreambinding this almost every time you kill it, except for the very end of the game. And if your opponent was going heavy on needing these out in play to get this, or they were going all in on the Transform Mechana, their game might as well have just ended. If you have a thin deck and you can do this relatively on demand and keep getting rid of the important constructs at the important time, they're just going to suffer. It's going to be miserable for them. Alright, and here is the... You rarely have the insight to Dreambind it, but oh my goodness if you can, why would you not? 5 points, take a card at random from an opponent's hand and add it to your hand. And you can Dreambind it for 7 to get those 5 points again and steal another card. Get 5 points again, steal another card. This is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying card. Note that you need to keep a close eye on where the game is as far as ending from the honor pool. A lot of times that we're seeing the 7-cost monster die, it's too late for you to ever draw it. Keep that in mind. Even if you have the 7 insight, save it and hope for some phantasms. Do something else instead. But can you really go wrong with stealing stuff from them and gaining 5 points repeatedly? This is an absolutely spectacular card. Alright, let's talk about the rest of the monsters in the set. Let you see what else you could be up for grabs on killing. Fair warning, I think that power decks are very, very useful in Deliverance. I hit them more frequently than anything else, unless I'm going full-on Transform Mechana and a little bit of Enlighten support like the Psionic guy. Alright, Night Marauders, it's a cultist that gives you a insight, and there's 4 of those. They come up quite frequently in games, just getting a little more insight in the pool. Terminites, each opponent destroys the lowest cost construct they control. It's just an annoying way to keep killing constructs. There's 4 of these in the deck. They come up frequently. 3 power for 3 points is actually a really great ratio. Most 3-cost monsters in Ascension, in fact, there's never been a 3-cost monster before this that gives 3 points. Nope, I'm wrong. War of Shadows had one, didn't it? War of Shadows had a 3-point monster, and you could even pay 3 runes to get 3 more. Which it also was a spectacularly overpowered monster. Then we've got the Dream Titan. Now we're swinging even bigger on the points. 5 costing the kill for 6 honor. Alrighty. If you're like me and you're looking at, well, wait a minute. You've got all these Dreambind things that you can keep gaining honor over and over by adding them to your deck. Direct honor gain. You've got all of these great things to kill. Why wouldn't I go power? I don't know why you wouldn't. It's actually really very valuable in this set. Alright, Dream Tyrant, 5 points, 5 insight, you can't go wrong with that. That's an instant transformed Mechana. That's most of the other transformed cards, a big chunk towards Thea. Of course you want to kill this. Sometimes these cards are out with the Dreambinds at the same time, and you're like, oh, do I risk leaving the Dreambind? Maybe my opponent's going to get it, or do I just stack up on Insight? I can't tell you the right move. That's one of the best parts about the game, is making those decisions when there's two great monsters and you can kill them both. Alright, River Reaper. Each opponent destroys everything but one construct. They get to pick, so they're going to keep their best thing, but a full construct wipe twice. Here is possibly the meanest thing they could have added to this game. Gain 6 honor, add a Dreambind monster in the void to your hand right away, meaning you can play it. It's bad enough when someone killed a Dread Mage early and they couldn't afford to Dreambind it, and now you just pick it up, gain 2 more honor and 2 more cards in that same big turn that you had 8 power. But what if you can grab something like, oh, I don't know, this. Take another 5 points and a card from their hand, and you can repeat it because it's now in your deck forever. This is mean. I mean, it's supposed to be mean. I do like that most of its power is wrapped up in the combo with other stuff. Alright, moving on to the Enlightened. We have the Dreamwalker. Really interesting card. First of all, let's just pull this down so you can only see the first line. Banish a card in the center row. I would absolutely buy a 1-cost card just for that almost every day. I love controlling the center row. I can get rid of the high rune cost things if I'm going for a Power Honor Rush deck. If I'm trying to go for those Mechanas, I can easily just be like, ha, goodbye big monsters, goodbye Dreambind monsters that my opponent's going to have easy access to. Just keep getting rid of good stuff. But then it goes and adds these 3 lines. If the card that replaces what you banish is a monster, you get 2 insight. Well, now it's just as good as the 1-cost gain 2 insight in Dreamscape, or not Dreamscape, in Delirium. And you got to banish something in the center too. But if it's a hero, you get 2 honor, helping Honor Rush be even more effective. And if it's replaced by a construct, you draw 2 cards. Are you serious? Banish a card in the center row, draw 2 cards? We love those 4-cost cards that are draw a card, banish card in the center. Now I might even get an extra bonus, and this thing cost me 1? Oh my gosh, why does this card exist? I'm really thankful it does exist, because this is my absolute control the game kind of style, and it favors it so strongly. The one problem with it being a 1-cost is it's not much of an investment to grab. Far too frequently it feels like it just flips out as an afterthought, and the player who's turned it in is like, oh yeah, I have 1 left over, sure, I'll definitely take that. Or sure, I'll take that just to see what flips and have options for the rest of my buying power this turn. It needed to be higher, guys. 2 or 3. Honestly, I'd have paid 3 in a heartbeat. I'd have paid 5 personally, but I overvalue Banish Center Row because I know how to use it. Alright, don't bother looking at him yet. I was just flipping the cards and didn't take him with me. The Azurite Channeler. Here is a Dreambind, so this is where some of your insight's going to start flooding the board. Banish a card in your hand, replace it with a Mystic or a Heavy. This is a replace, not an acquire, which is important for some effects. For example, if you have, oh I don't know, this Plunder effect, if you acquire a card and defeat a monster, this upgrade, this replace did not satisfy the acquire. And old school Arha Sensei does fulfill the requirement of acquiring a card, because it says banish a card in your hand, acquire a Mystic or Heavy, and put it in your hand. Alright, but the Plunder, this was the first time it came out, it's also in Skulls and Sails, is if you acquire a card and defeat a monster, gain a bonus, 2 insight. You get an insight for hitting the center, you get an insight for buying it since it's Dreamborn, and every time you play it, you have the opportunity to get 2 more. Early in the game, just having a, what do you call it, a militia in your hand and upgrading to a heavy, you can kill an easy, cheap little monster, either the 2 cost just by getting rid of the militia, or saving the militia and getting rid of an apprentice to have 3. It's easy to get that monster defeat if there's one out there. They do have to be center row buy, so you have to have enough to buy something in the center that wasn't like a heavy infantry. But this goes off pretty frequently. Speaking of insight, I've told you this set is all about insight management. What about a 3 cost for 2 points that draws a card? If that's all it did, it was already a reasonable buy in the mid-game. Early on, you want your early purchases to help your deck build and grow, and this wasn't doing a lot of it unless you can hit the serenity of gain 2 insight as long as you have nothing in your discard pile. Hello! Early in the game, you've got almost a 40% chance that after your first shuffle, you're going to get this in your next hand, and boom, there you go, 2 insight. The more banish you have, the more frequently this is going to go off. Not the greatest card ever, but certainly something to consider as being more powerful than it might look. Dreamwalker. This is a construct, sits in front of you. Does absolutely nothing until you can do the plunder, acquire, and defeat a monster. If you're going for a honor rush deck, you're going to find that you're going to be doing plunder more frequently. So plunder effects like the Dreamwalker are solid to have invested in early. Alright. Now here is a card that we need to talk about not just for its face value. Its face value is a 5 cost for 3 points, draw 2 cards. It's a straight upgrade of one of the cards in the original set that was a 5 for 2 points and draw 2 cards. Card cycling is great. Everyone likes card cycling. It on its own doesn't do anything. If you have no mystics or mystic equivalents in your deck, getting this super early, you might actually consider just taking the mystic instead. You're investing in your late game. Your late game is going to be great with this. But let's talk about this Phantasm. Pay 5 insight to banish it and play it immediately from the center row. Being able to look at your hand and go, oh, I've got 6 runes and the Ironheart is out there. All I need is 8. What's the chance that with 2 card draws I can get it? Maybe I'm just going to invest my 5 insight, draw 2 cards, see if I get it. Or, oh, I can almost set off a gigantic kill combo. Maybe I'm just going to do that. I feel like I Phantasm play this more than most players. It's really great to add to your deck for that late game build up, and burn. But it's hard to pass up what that Phantasm timed well can do. Most players I know will never Phantasm it. They're just like, oh, what a waste of insight. 2 cards, 1 time, 5 insight? No. If you time it right, it's kind of like rolling the Delirium die. Maybe you're going to draw enough power. Maybe you're going to draw enough runes. It's actually mid and late game not all that different from the Delirium die and what you can expect to get from drawing 2 cards 1 time for 5 cost. You're also preventing your opponent from adding it to their deck because it's not in the center anymore. Alright. Here's another Dreamborn, so insight when it comes out, insight to whoever buys it. Copy the effect of a hero you've played. Everybody loves copy. Oh yeah, already sold. Or a monster reward you have gained this turn. That can be a monster reward that you gain from killing it in the center. That can be a monster reward that you have played from your hand and then copy it and do it again. I feel like I have done more Psychiskara and Dream Mage, or Dread Mage, play my Dread Mage, copy its effect again. I feel like I've done that more than any other thing with all of the cards in this set as far as my copies go. Of course, if you have enough insight for, oh, I don't know, this, consider not buying it the second you can buy it. Wait for it, draw this in your hand and go, yep, I'm going to add this to my hand right now. Get 2/2/2, draw a card, copy it, 2/2/2, draw a card. Now you've got a 6-card hand replacement after it's done, and you've gained 4 of everything already. That's a quick way to end a game in a real hurry at the end. Alright, and now we've got the big enlightened. The Dartha Dreammaster. Phantasm for 9. I feel like I do Phantasm this one reasonably often too, where I just save up and then give up on going for a big thing and just pay the 9. It gets it out of the center. You acquire any card in the center row without paying its cost, put it in your hand. Very important. It does say that you banish it, then play it with the Phantasm. That means Dartha's gone. a new card flips out, and then you take its effect of acquire a card in the center without paying its cost. So whatever the replacement card is could be the one that you buy. It does replace first. Don't forget this whole put it in your hand thing. This particular combo I wanted to leave out here because this acquire a card in the center row, this is out. I acquire this and put it in my hand. This has been played this turn. Copy the effect of a hero you have played. I can do it again. Even if there's a big 8 cost Mechana out there, I am first going to Dartha the Psyche and then Dartha again to get that other thing I wanted. People I've seen at least a couple times where they did this and they used it on the big thing first, not realizing, oh yes, even though I don't own this, even though it gets banished and goes to the void, this is a card you had played that turn. It is copyable. Alright, stressed that enough, moving on. My game day is coming up here in a hurry and I still got 3 stacks to get through. So I'm going to start going a little faster. This one, gain 1 and 1. It's actually not bad for a 1 cost card, just to get a little bit of everything. It is 2 resources for 1, but I find that I phantasm it more often than anything else. It's 2 to phantasm, which does hurt for 1 and 1, but if you can put that right back into killing the monster for some extra points, maybe even getting some insight back, and buy a better card, go for it. Then we've got the Control Smith. This is one of the things making those Mechana constructs from earlier that transform not as bad as... I mean, honestly, they don't seem all that shiny compared to what else we've seen. But 2 runes and draw a card, as long as you have that mechanism going, that's pretty easy to set off. It just costs 5 insight to do it. Then we've got the Stone Artificers. Put the next construct you acquire straight into play. Really effective when you combine it with these things so that you can grab this in a real hurry. Real effective if you warp a Mechana straight into your pile, transform it immediately, and do some good stuff with it. For example, if I have this in my deck, I do not transform those Mechana constructs the second I have the option, or I don't activate them. Like the Void Cycler says once per turn, gain 1 for each thing. If I don't need that one, I don't activate this card until after I've had the chance to maybe acquire a new thing, maybe transform another, and make it give an even bigger effect when I activate. Alright, then we have the Gear Seer. Here's another thing that I will hit more often than most players. 3 runes, cost 5. Oh yeah, definitely a great card. It's no Hadron Berserker where it's 3 runes or 3 power for this cost, but it's still spectacular. And you have the Phantasm option for 6 to grab a huge card like, oh I don't know, Dartha or the Ironheart just by paying that 6 insight at the right time. There are so many things in this set that are going to make you want to pay insight constantly that you have to learn when to save and when to hold. If you save properly and then you don't hold it and you do this at the right time and grab some giant thing like, oh I don't know, maybe an Emma's Workshop, you can do a lot with that. Because Emma's Workshop is once per turn, transform a Mechana construct without paying for it. If this is on the field and you're confident you can get to it, or you already did get to it, it makes every other Mechana construct a exclusionary. Your opponent has to buy it, or you're going to run away with the game in a real hurry, because you're just going to keep transforming them for free. The main drawback is that 5 insight to transform. Alright, Introphasm. This could be the greatest 1 cost I've ever seen. Oh wait, no it's not. I'm saying that as a joke because you know what the greatest 1 cost I've ever seen is? This. Absolutely this. But this is a pretty close second. 1 insight, 1 rune, it's a better apprentice, and it has a unite, draw a card. I was always a fan in Immortal Heroes where they had that 1 cost Lifebound that just had 1 insight or 1 rune and then just draw a card unite. I've always gotten good mileage out of that because if you invest in the Lifebound, you're going to frequently find late in the game that you got that 1 rune for free and you set off other unites as well for free. This one comes with insight gain constantly and that possible bonus. Highly recommend it. Oh look, speaking of getting unites off, a draw a card guy that's cheap. You can't go wrong with draw a card Lifebounds because they help you hit Unites very frequently. And it has this plunder effect that if you can do both things, you get 3 points. 3 points is not shabby. Speaking of not shabby, here are the green Spritelings. 4 insight to Phantasm it, but it's a 3 cost for 2 points, and every time you play it, you get 3 more. If you are going for a Dreambind monster deck, do not let this card pass. If your opponent is going for a Dreambind monster deck, you might want to just Phantasm it, because if you add it to your own deck, you're going to help the honor pool end very quickly. 3 honor every time it comes up. You're going to make the game go way too fast for you to get enough engine going to overcome that early advantage. The early advantage of just lots of power and lots of Dreambind monsters that you're going to play for more points repeatedly, and you're just going to end the game so quick. This card is really important. Just paying that 4 preventatively to get it only one time, 4 insight for 3 points is not great. It's actually relatively similar to what you get in Delirium terms, but getting this card away from either player, not having the game end so fast, is really important if you are not the one using that strategy. If you are the one using that strategy, don't even care if your opponent Phantasms. It still helps you, but buy it if you can. Alright, here is most of my friends' favorite card in the set. Gain 2 runes. The next time you acquire a hero, gain 2 power. If you're going, how can you go wrong with this? Early in the game, it's a mystic that as long as you're buying hero type build cards, it also gives you, oh, I don't know, power that turn. This is, I don't know why this exists. I honestly cannot excuse a 3 cost card giving this. At the very least, it needed to be worth 1 honor at the end of the game, so that way you consider not taking it late in the game. I don't know. There's just no reason not to take this unless there's something else that's absolutely your strategy. And it's Lifebound. Lifebound Unites are important. Speaking of Lifebound Unites are important, the Werebore. There are 3 of these, and I have found that these are more insight gaining than they should be. They seem to hit the center row a lot. They seem to get purchased for their insight just to be able to play and transform other stuff more than they are for their actual effect. The actual effect is not that great at first glance. It's 2 power. Alright, 2 power on a Lifebound 4 cost? That kinda sucks. But again, I've been stressing over and over how much Lifebound Void and Dreambind monsters are a powerful, powerful combo. If you have enough other Lifebound to get this Unite off, and we've seen several of them that have draw card and draw card Unites, to get 3 runes on it, 3 runes on a 4 cost card is spectacular. Picking up 2 of these at the beginning of the game, if you draw them together and you get 4 power and 6 runes on top of the other 3 cards in your hand, you are just going to go on an epic steamroll of a journey. Alright, now we have the Tree of Bounty. This is another construct that does absolutely nothing unless you can set off plunder, but every time you do plunder, you get 3 points. Note that defeating a monster in the center row strictly has nothing to do with Dreambind monsters, because it wasn't in the center row, and you didn't defeat it, you just played it for its effect. Dreambind monsters are not defeating. Alright, then the highest cost Lifebound, I kid you not, the highest cost Lifebound is a 6. Well, or a 16, depends on how you look at it. 3 points, draw a card. Well, hello, cycling the honor pool faster. Plunder effect for another 3 points. Well, hello, everything I've ever wanted out of my Lifebound combos. I've always been a fan of the honor rush strategy. If you can control the pace of the game, give it a nice controlled burn, I don't know, maybe abuse some of those 1 cost banish from the center row enlightened guys to make the pace be fast, 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 and never let anyone get any of this big stuff that can come back with epic in-game combos, you can't go wrong. This set offers everything I want to make that a viable tactic. So, speaking of this as a viable tactic, I haven't showed you the other reason it's viable. All of the Void cards. Void cards are very important if you're going to go for a Dreambind Honor Rush strategy. Mind you, both sides of the coin are very usable. I actually don't think that I go for a long-term strategy in Deliverance unless I picked up one of these early in the game and can intentionally banish monsters repeatedly to keep my opponent from having anything to put its power down except for cultists. Alright, Phantasm for 2. I find that I do this relatively frequently. Normally when it's come out and I don't have enough to buy it, it's just a militia in power, but it banishes a card in hand or discard pile. Getting one of these early in the game to be able to keep banish and banish and banish and banish and banish and banish, you can't go wrong. But consider if you're already past round 3 or 4 and it's round 5 now, don't buy it. Just Phantasm it, play it once, get that quick banish effect and move on with your life. You won't have time to play it enough for the things that you're not seeing to have made up for the fact that you are seeing a militia equivalent repeatedly. Alright, Void Amethyst Defender. Whoever made this card, I need to give a big, big hug to, even if they don't know how to spell Amethyst. It's 2 power, and if you have a Void card in your discard pile, it's 2 Insight. When you don't need the card for your buying power, it means you're much more likely on a turn to have an option of buying a Void with the other cards that you drew in that same hand, putting it into your discard pile right away when you buy it, and then get this Echo. I feel like this Echo goes off constantly. It's also pretty funny when someone kills a Terminites and you just kill one of these kind of guys, and you're like, oh no, look, an all factions card went to my discard pile. Echo, Echo, Echo. Thank you. Alright, this is weird. I have no idea why there's one of these. I do know that there are 3 constructs that are cheap in this set, and they're all this kind of plunder effect. This one is not a plunder per se. This is instead, if you gain 2 insight in the same turn, gain 2 power. Well, given how frequently you're going to have a Dreamseeker come up in your deck, just having any other cards that give insight, or getting an Echo one time, or killing one monster that gives insight, it's so easy to set this off and get this power. I did just say that some of the easy things that give you this power were monsters, so that 2 extra power is really just going to be a 1-point cultist, but this goes off way more than you'd think. Even just one Dreamborn hitting the center and then you buy it, boom, instantly got your 2 insight. The Evokist. I don't know what to tell you here. I love buying it because 3 power on a single card allows you to do a lot of good stuff. This is a Demon Hunter effectively. The main power cost focus of the monsters in this set are heavy towards the 4 and 5 cost. This is most of that all on its own. But that Phantasm effect, I've won quite a few games by just waiting until a 7 or 8 cost monster is in reach by phantasming that extra 3. It's a risk to leave it out there because your opponent might do it, but even when they could do it, they don't always notice. Alright, Nihil Bomber. This is one that I'm anticipated needing to say the most about. People seem to love or hate this card. First of all, it's a 5 cost Void. 5 cost Voids have traditionally always been either the most powerful thing ever, or oh gosh, that sucks. What a pity. They can't seem to come up with a good high value Void that isn't going to break the game by killing everything too easily or banishing too easily, or just be, whatever, it's pathetic. Because the Void abilities are way too good when they're too good, and they're way too bad if they're too weak. Because you could have just done heavy infantry. This one got it spot on. You draw a card. You can't go wrong with a draw a card. Banish a card in your hand or discard pile. You're not just limited to discard pile, so you're always going to have the option. If you do, gain an insight. The entire Deliverance set is all about insight management. Being able to kill your early cards and turn them into insight is absolutely the most valuable thing. I love it. Depending upon what's out there, this is not an instant buy for me. There are so many 4 and even 3 cost cards that I just feel are absolutely critical to the game pace and to what's going on. But pretty frequently I am not going to turn down a Nihil Bomber. There are 5 cost Voids in other sets, including Delirium, where I'm like, I'll take a Mystic and a Heavy, thanks. or just a Mystic even, or too heavy. Anything but that. I don't want it. I'm okay. Thank you. Alright. And it is funny, because the Delirium one, that's the 5 cost, is gain 2 insight and banish a card. This draw a card, making it flexible, and so you can choose how to spend it or not even spend it sometimes, is just so much better than that. Definitely getting 2 insight, but not sure if you're going to get good use out of the banish or not. That one little twist made this card completely viable. Alright, now we're getting to the 2 big boys. Naka, Imri's Chosen. 4 power on a single card, and if you kill a Dreambind monster, you pay 0 for them. It doesn't say the next Dreambind you kill costs 0. It says this turn you may pay 0 for their cost. You can Dreambind any number of things in the same turn with that. Yes, please. Because once you've got a Naka in your deck and you're starting to kill some stuff effectively, anything that gives you points when you draw it and play it, you're going to end the game before anyone can deal with it and catch up. And then we have Mr. Monster himself, Imri the Soul Stealer. 5 power on a card, that's awesome. If there's already 10 monsters in the void, say, I don't know, someone's been a jerk and has been banishing them, or, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm a jerk and I have Imri, and I put the last monster out there with the Dreamwalker. Hey, look, now I play it for 10 power instead. Sure, I have one less monster to kill, but as long as there's any decent monsters, or I can just kill 5 cultists, that's not unreasonable. Okay, the 5 cultists isn't very good. I'd rather just kill any monster with 5, get my solid points, kill 1 more cultist, depends on what it was worth. But most of the time I'd probably take the monster effect. Take the risk. Get rid of that monster if it's really the 10th one. Get your 10 power for sure and hope the next card that flips is a monster. If it's a monster, you're getting insight, and then you're going to get the chance to smack it with that 10 power and kill anything that comes. Take the risk. Now, getting the 10 monsters in this set is way harder than it should be, because so many of them get dreambound to decks that they're not collecting in the void. Alright, that's pretty much everything I have to say about Deliverance. Now you should know what to expect from the set and can make some decent decisions on how to play. Hopefully I haven't swayed you too much in the just honor rush it, dreambind these cheap things, get your points, do nothing exciting on your turns except for kill some stuff and gain some honor and make your deck thinner so you can keep repeating it. But that is really, really fun to do and really, really cool. Some people don't like it because they want that big in-game explosiveness. Go the other way. If you can get the explosive mechana and you set it off with 2 or 3 transformed mechanas, you are just going to go to town turn after turn after turn after turn, and you're going to have an unstoppable engine roll, and you'll catch up on the monster points in the end of the game. It's totally viable. It's just not as easy to do. It is easy with so many things in this set to set off the Dreambind is awesome. That said, if your opponent is rushing harder than you are, consider not Dreambinding something good just because it's ending the game too fast. You need time to run your engine, improve your engine, and actually get out and ahead. If you start thinning your own deck out with cards that don't do anything that turn except for help in the game and gain points, sure, the point swing for you was solid. 4 points on a card can't really go wrong unless the game ends 2 rounds early and you never got a chance to play your epic combo that you've been building. Pace is everything in Deliverance. Hope that's been helpful, and that's all for me today.